You can't use that coupon. Hey all, it's your friendly neighborhood teacher, cashier, produce department employee here. I have parent-teacher conferences coming up. I'm due for a haircut. I decided going to Super Clips using one of their coupons to do so. The coupon was for a haircut for $10.99 USD. That was location specific. I also had one for a free haircut through the app that I could use whenever. I decided to not show the coupon until the end. I got my hair cut and was expecting some small talk or something, which I actually dread, but this guy was super focused on a conversation he was having with his neighbor. No biggie. When I presented my coupon at the end, the guy literally threw the coupon back at me saying, "Oh, we don't take those ones at this location." I started to argue that the location listed specifically lists the location I was at before I was saliva erupted as he spit back, literally, "You can't use that coupon, sweetie." Not the good sweetie. Enter the Malicious Compliance. I pulled out my phone, tapped the free coupon I had, and he rolled his eyes harder than my 8th grader as he scanned it. Funny thing was that I was paying with a 20, so I was going to tip the difference, which would have been like $7 or $8. Instead, I threw him a 5. With the same energy, he threw the coupon back to me. What's up, guys? Welcome back to Storytime with Uncle Jon. Today, we're taking a look at r/Malicious Compliance. Yeah, I don't understand why this guy got all peed off because you were presenting a coupon when he knows, if he's worked at that location for more than a day or two, he knows that his company puts out coupons for that location and some that are generic for that chain that work at almost any location. But, he could have at least looked at it and found out, yes, it works here. No, it doesn't work here. But just to say that we don't take these here, sweetie. Never sure why older guys tend to say sweetie, sweetheart, whatever. It sounds a little condescending. Sounds a lot condescending, actually. Dearie, like old ladies will say, no, dearie. What does he care if you have a coupon? I mean, you were going to still tip him and he still gets his rate. I don't think at the big chain places they rent their chairs like at a small mom and pop barbershop. But either way, he was going to make his money. What did he care? I don't know. I bit my dental hygienist. So this morning I went to my dentist office to have a root planning, which is where a dentist numbs your mouth and the dental hygienist cleans under your gums. Ugh. At some point, the dental hygienist had asked me to close my mouth, and I closed my mouth halfway. She got annoyed and told me again to close my mouth. I closed it almost all the way. She gasped and barked at me, "Close it!" The reason why I didn't close it all the way was because she was holding my bottom lip with a mirror on a stick, and her pinky was between my teeth. But I thought to myself, okay, if you insist on yelling at me to close my mouth, I will. So I closed my mouth and bit her pinky. She then yelled and shook her hand in pain. Okay, that hygienist was a total dumbass. Let me tell you something. If you work in somebody's mouth and you don't have any spatial awareness of where your digits are, then you're an idiot and you're in the wrong business. Just like me being a carpenter, if I'm hitting nails, I got to know where my fingers are all the time. Otherwise, no, I'm not saying you don't ever slip up and, whack your finger. But, for the most part, you know where your hand is, you know where your thumb is, you know where your fingers are. It just kind of comes with the territory. Human bites hurt. Any bites hurt. You sure you want your money? Fine. You're going to get every penny. This isn't my story. It was a close friend of a then close friend. I'm not sure how I never thought about sharing this, as it's one of the best malicious compliance stories I've ever heard. There's also quite a bit of background here, mostly to explain old tech. This guy, we'll call him G, was pretty wealthy. Dude had a nepo job where he worked in a factory fixing the machinery which almost literally never broke. Someone always had to be on duty to be ready for repairs, so he got all kinds of overtime and was being paid almost $75 an hour in the early 2000s. To give you an idea of the kind of money he was making and how he didn't care. He spent most whole days sitting around watching movies on a personal laptop that he had spent over $2,000 on and just left it at his desk. If he had a call to the floor, it would take him no more than an hour, and that would happen maybe 3 times a week. Holidays were 2.5 times pay, and he worked every one of them. This guy was a bit of a tech nerd, and he got an ISDN account as soon as it came out. For you youngins or folks who weren't savvy at the time, ISDN was basically 2 56.6 kilobytes per second modems smooshed together. This was back when 56.6 was as good as it got for residential, and you could still pay for slower, so fast AF for its day. Back in the days of dial-up, the dark ages, some services would be paid by the minute of usage in addition to your monthly bill, and that's how his worked. Also, because dial-up was literal and used existing infrastructure, you could take your modem with you and use it somewhere else by logging onto your account from a new location and dialing the closest number to you. This was also back in the day of long-distance charges. Now for the actual story. G just got his ISDN modem, and after a day or so, took it to his brother's house one town over to show him how fast it was. And after they played around on the internet for a bit, G had to go to work and he would be doing some long shifts for the next couple days. So his brother asked to borrow his modem, which G said was fine. I don't understand exactly how it happened, but his brother had signed into a long distance number and then forgot to shut the connection down. And then G got his first month's bill. It was over $14,000. Holy cow. He immediately called the service provider and explained the situation, and they basically told him, "You signed a contract, sucks to suck. We want our money." He relented and set up a payment plan. He would also be required to keep the contract going until the bill was fully paid. Now, if you've never even heard of ISDN, even if you're 30 plus years old, I don't blame you. This was a very short-lived technology and was replaced by DSL just a couple years later. But unlike ISDN, DSL required new infrastructure, and for some reason, I don't fully understand, but I've guessed it's probably the way some important switch on the service provider's network was set up. The two services could not coexist in the same small region. Region's the size of like a neighborhood. And G lived in a pretty nice neighborhood. Not mansions, but upper middle class. The best neighborhood our small town had to offer, in fact, and people just wanted DSL. It was the first time the internet was getting close to recognizable as it is today, because it was so much faster than what was previously available. The folks in this neighborhood wanted those speeds and did not like being told they couldn't have it. So service provider calls up G and explained the situation and offered to waive the remaining amount of the bill. G told them the whole bill was BS and asked if they would refund what he had already paid, but they just told him to go F himself. Cue Malicious Compliance. G tells them he has a contract and points out that they're obligated to fulfill their end of the contract, and he'll be paying his bill in full, and hung up. He keeps paying. Service provider keeps getting calls from more customers wanting DSL, and folks who had previously called, calling back more and more irate. G gets another call, then another, until service provider decides to just tell people exactly who is responsible for their neighborhood's lack of DSL service. His neighbors let loose on him, but does G care? Not at all. Just keeps paying his bill. This went on for more than a year. Eventually, the service provider just decided to get rid of ISDN completely, as it was a legitimately outdated technology, and did forgive the remainder of G's bill since they weren't fulfilling their end of the contract. But the whole thing was just wonderful. Edit. Some people have pointed out technical issues with the story, and someone said that I'm repeating a tall tale from someone else and that ally be true? What? I don't know. This is the story as it was told to me. Well, yeah, you gotta watch even what your friends tell you. Sometimes they'll stretch things a bit or, take a story from somewhere else and make it their own, but I gotta say, G was kind of a smacked ass. He might have got his malicious compliance, but ultimately, he didn't do anything to that service provider. He didn't hurt them one bit, and what he did do was piss his neighbors off for more than a year. And by the way, DSL, I remember DSL was working on the same infrastructure for a while, because there was, from Verizon at least, there was a dongle that you got that you put in your phone jack and then hooked your RJ cable into that to go to your modem. So it was running off the existing phone lines, whatever, I don't understand the rest of that, but I do know that it was working off existing phone lines. So that's all I wanted to say. Want me to keep talking even if nobody's listening? All right. This happened when I was around 14 or 15. I was telling a story to my dad, and at one point he was interrupting me, told me to keep talking, I'm listening very carefully. Then he left and closed the door. I didn't know it at the time, but he was very proud of this joke. He made it to my mom a couple times. She never liked it. Anyway, I thought it was somewhat funny, but also pretty rude. Never mind, I knew an opportunity to teach my dad a lesson would come sooner than later, so I waited, and a couple hours later he would come and ask me to do the dishes. I told him, I can't. He says, what do you mean you can't? Why can't you do the dishes? I said, I told you earlier. He said, no you didn't. I said, yes I did. You know this. You told me you were listening very carefully. Him realizing what I was doing, oh right, well could you remind me? I forgot. I say, no way, I'm not repeating myself. I already gave you a very simple and rational explanation. My dad was strict, but he knew when he was beaten at his own game. He did the dishes that day and he never made the joke again. There have been times, as a parent, that I've said that I was listening and I was really trying to listen, but then I get distracted by things because I have the attention span of a freaking turnip sometimes. But anyway, it was not intentional like this guy. And he even went one step further and walked out of the room and closed the door, so you knew he wasn't listening. Well, good for you, kid. At least Dad stopped doing that. I would have left, admitted defeat, and then you still would have done the dishes. But anyway, I know when I'm wrong, but still, if it's your chore, it's your chore. Dad stuff. Get something on and I'll help you. Took my son swimming. The 8-year-old was getting dressed by himself, so far so good, but his 4-year-old brother was being slow after drying. I was almost dressed, he was still naked. I made the mistake of saying, "Put on one thing and I'll help you with the rest," assuming underwear would go on. No one needs to see that. He reaches into his bag, massive smile on his face, and puts on a silicone wristband. Well played, little man. Well played. Sounds about right for a 4-year-old. They're always going to be slow, and it's like herding cats trying to get little kids dressed. Even if you're the one doing the dressing, you would think it would be simple. I'm holding the underwear. I'm holding them in the right position, the right way around. All you got to do is lift a leg, and I'll scoop up and, get you covered up. No. There's just limbs everywhere, and they're talking a mile a minute, and maybe even screaming if they're in a mood. And, getting dressed just takes on a whole new meaning at that point. Want me to come see you even though I'm sick and trying to go to the bathroom? Okay. Currently on the mend from COVID, and being sick reminded me, 27 male, something I did when I was younger, and I thought some people here would enjoy it. During Christmas break, during my first or second year in college, I was roughly 19 at the time, my siblings and I were in charge of cleaning up the house before we had guests over for Christmas Eve dinner. I was feeling off that day and kept running to the bathroom to relieve myself. I had the runs, really not trying to be punny. My bedroom was in the basement, but I had to come upstairs to use the bathroom anytime I needed to go. So next time I had to go, I felt like I was going to throw up. I flew up the stairs and tried to run to the bathroom, but my older sister, 22-ish at the time, called me from the kitchen. It went something like this. Sister says, "OP, come here." I say, "Okay, but can I go to the bathroom first?" Sis says, "No, I need you to come here now." I say, "But sis, I think I'm going to be..." Sis yells, "OP, come here now." Understanding that I would be yelled at regardless of what choice I did, I begrudgingly went to the kitchen. My sister barely opened her mouth before I ran over to the sink and hurled into it. Oh, God. I don't think I ever threw up so much before in my life. My sister was pissed and sent me to my room, where I ended up spending the rest of the day in confinement. Turns out I had a pretty bad stomach bug, and my sister had to clean up the sink I threw up in. I ended up missing out on the nice barbecue dinner my family had that night. No, it was not Christmas Eve that day. My siblings and I were just getting deep cleaning done that day. But come Christmas morning, my sister couldn't join the rest of us for the gift opening because she was sick. To this day, she gets mad whenever this story gets brought up and tells me I should have just gone to the bathroom. Always be careful what you ask for, kids. If somebody's urgently telling you that they got to do something before they come see you, you might want to listen, because you'll end up on the shit end of the stick, so to speak. Weaponized incompetence. When I was a young technical writer, I worked for a small software company that was kind of winding down. Our administrator left or was let go, I can't remember, but in any case, she wasn't there any longer. At the next development meeting, they asked me to take minutes. I'm a writer, right? And a woman, so maybe that had something to do with it. Anyway, minute taking was not in my job description, but I agreed to do it. I had learned weaponized incompetence from my brothers, who used to do chores so poorly that they would be reassigned to me. During the meeting, I wrote down every dumb joke and stupid comment the developers made. I included everything in the meeting minutes, which were distributed to the whole company. The fallout was they never asked me to take minutes again. I think some of my kids have learned weaponized incompetence. Actually, I've used it in the past too. I don't think I even did it on purpose, but it just kind of becomes the default when there's something you really, really just don't want to do. I'm not saying it's right, but it does happen. Ask me to translate live? Fine, I will. This was more than 15 years ago, but it still makes me smile. I worked for a nonprofit which was owned by a mother company. The manager of the nonprofit managed to run the company into the ground financially, and the mother company considered two options: firing us all and rehiring us with no accumulated benefits and no tenure, or firing us and selling the company. This was in Israel, official language Hebrew, but the mother company were all Americans. They decided to have a meeting with all the workers to discuss the terms of our continuing to work, but insisted the discussion be held in English. The employees all spoke Hebrew, of course, and many weren't fluent in spoken English, but the mother company representatives doubled down on the language, despite the fact that many of them knew Hebrew. It was clearly a tactic to confuse the workers. In the end, the compromise was that the meeting would be held in English, with on-the-spot translation supplied by our company. As the only total bilingual, I was asked to translate. I knew they were trying to sell us a rotten deal. I also knew some of their people knew Hebrew, so I couldn't indicate my opinion about what was said, or even use a sarcastic tone when I knew what was said was false or manipulative. So I translated, faithfully. But whenever I had to translate something like the mother company representative said, which I knew was manipulative, I made a slightly longer pause before the main part of the sentence. All my coworkers caught on very quickly. The mother company's offers were rejected. We hired a good lawyer and got nearly twice the severance pay they initially offered us. Too bad they didn't have a fine ear for speech rhythm. My feeling is this: if the majority of the company, whether it's owners, employees, whatever, if the majority of the company speaks Hebrew, the meeting should have been held in Hebrew, and then people like me, who only speak English, could have been translated for at that point. You still need a translator either way, I guess, but it would have been simpler, I think. I don't know. What do you think? Let me know down below. But honestly, at the end of the day, it's the corporation's money, and it's their, it's their business. They can do what they want with it. And if the deal's no good, then, reject the offers like you did, and it all works out in the end. I guess it depends on the contracts. I don't know. Let me know what your thoughts are down below. And oh, by the way, in very plain and easy to understand English terms, if you like handmade soaps and bath and body products and beard stuff and shave stuff, do me a favor and visit the website down here. I think there might be something you like there. You never know. Check it out. Just saying.